In the 1950s and 1970s, seniors who lived alone knew how to make TV dinners that mattered. Their work in the kitchen didn't just reheat Swanson's steak. They divided the pot roast into aluminum tray and made dinner when cooking for one felt impossible. These 30 forgotten homemade TV dinners might sound too lonely today, but they kept seniors through the quiet years. Let's rediscover what Grandma ate when no one else was coming to dinner. Salisbury steak with mashed potatoes and peas wasn't fancy restaurant food. It was the TV dinner seniors made at home when cooking for one felt too much, and a divided aluminum tray made cleanup easier than washing 3 separate plates. The steak was a pressed beef patty covered in brown gravy, shaped oval and flat. The smell was salty beef and onion powder, and the taste was soft, salty and faintly metallic from the canned gravy. It cost about 65 cents in 1965, ground beef from the butcher, instant mashed potatoes from a box, frozen peas from a bag, brown gravy from a packet. Some grandmothers made Salisbury steak every Monday night after grocery shopping, dividing the meal into compartments on a metal cafeteria tray. Children who visited ate it without complaint because Grandma's house meant TV dinners and cartoons. The meal reheated well and kept Grandma from standing at the stove for an hour cooking multiple dishes she'd eat alone. If Salisbury steak felt too plain, what came next was crispier and tasted like Sunday dinner shrunk down for one. Fried chicken with buttered corn was the homemade TV dinner seniors made when they craved something crispy but didn't want to fry a whole chicken for one person. A single drumstick or thigh, a scoop of canned corn, and a biscuit fit perfectly in a divided tray. The chicken was golden brown and greasy, shaped like a small drumstick. The smell was fried flour and black pepper, and the taste was salty, crispy on the outside and tender inside. It cost about 70 cents in 1967, 1 chicken leg from the butcher, canned corn, a store-bought biscuit. The corn was buttered and salted, the biscuit was soft and white. Some grandmothers fried chicken on Sundays and saved 1 piece for Monday's TV dinner, reheating it in the oven until the skin crisped again. And the meal was stored in the refrigerator on the same metal tray it would be reheated on. Children loved the drumstick because it felt like a treat, even though it was leftovers divided into sections. If fried chicken felt too greasy, what came next was holiday food, but served in a tray for one person eating alone. Turkey with dressing and cranberry sauce was the TV dinner seniors made from Thanksgiving leftovers, dividing the holiday meal into single portions that lasted through December, when no one came to visit. The turkey was sliced thin and gray, shaped into neat squares. The smell was sage dressing and canned cranberry, and the taste was dry, turkey softened by gravy, sweet tart cranberry sauce, and herbed stuffing that had been reheated too many times. It cost almost nothing in 1968. Leftover turkey from the holiday bird, boxed stuffing mix, canned cranberry sauce from the store. Some grandmothers made a dozen turkey TV dinners the day after Thanksgiving, wrapping each tray in foil and stacking them in the freezer. The meal was reheated in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 minutes, and the cranberry sauce was always the last thing eaten. The dressing dried out after the second reheating, but it was Thanksgiving dinner in January when the house was quiet. If turkey dinner felt too dry, what came next was comfort food, meatloaf that tasted like childhood but came in a single-serving tray. Before we move on, many of you asked in the comments where to find these recipes. We even received tons of email too, so we published these recipes on our website. The link is in the description. Let's continue. Meatloaf with green beans was the TV dinner seniors made when ground beef was on sale, and they needed 5 meals from 1 pound of meat. A thick slice of meatloaf, a pile of green beans, and a scoop of mashed potatoes fit into 3 compartments. The meatloaf was dense and browned on top, shaped like a thick rectangle. The smell was ketchup glaze and onion, and the taste was soft, beefy, and slightly sweet from the ketchup baked on top. It cost about 50 cents in 1966, ground beef stretched with breadcrumbs, canned green beans, instant mashed potatoes. The green beans were soft and salty, the potatoes were smooth and pale. Some grandmothers baked a meatloaf on Sunday and sliced it into 5 portions for the week's TV dinners, storing each tray in the refrigerator. The meal was reheated in the oven, and the meatloaf stayed moist under a layer of ketchup. Children visiting after school ate cold meatloaf TV dinners straight from the fridge because Grandma said reheating was too much trouble for a snack. If meatloaf felt too heavy, what came next was Sunday roast, but divided into portions for eating alone all week. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes was the TV dinner seniors made from Sunday's roast, dividing the leftovers into single-serving trays that reheated better than eating cold roast beef straight from the pot. The roast was sliced thin and gray-brown, shaped into uneven pieces. The smell was beef broth and cooked carrots, and the taste was soft, salty, and faintly sweet from carrots that had boiled too long. It cost about $1 in 1969, a small chuck roast from the butcher, carrots and potatoes from the garden or store, beef broth from a can. Some grandmothers cooked a pot roast every Sunday and divided the leftovers into 4 TV dinners for the week, reheating 1 each night. The carrots turned mushy after reheating, and the potatoes absorbed all the gravy. Children visiting on weekends ate pot roast TV dinners while watching cartoons, and the meal tasted better cold the next morning for breakfast. The first 5 TV dinners were familiar. Salisbury steak with mashed potatoes and peas, fried chicken with buttered corn, turkey with dressing and cranberry sauce, meatloaf with green beans, and pot roast with carrots and potatoes. But the next 5 go deeper, into fish sticks, chicken a la king, Swiss steak, and beef tips. Fish sticks with macaroni and cheese was the TV dinner seniors made on Fridays when meat was avoided and frozen fish was cheaper than fresh. 4 breaded fish sticks, a scoop of boxed macaroni and cheese, and a handful of peas fit into the divided tray and reheated in 20 minutes. The fish sticks were rectangular and golden, coated in crunchy breading that softened after reheating. The smell was fried fish and processed cheese, and the taste was mild, slightly fishy, and creamy from the macaroni. It cost about 55 cents in 1970, a box of frozen fish sticks, boxed macaroni and cheese, frozen peas. The fish sticks stayed crispy if reheated in the oven, but most seniors microwaved the whole tray and ate them soft. Some grandmothers made fish stick TV dinners every Friday and stored them in the freezer, pulling one out on busy days when cooking felt impossible. Children loved the fish sticks because they tasted like fast food, and the macaroni was bright orange and salty. The peas were always left uneaten, pushed to the side of the tray and scraped into the trash. By the time microwaves became common in the 1980s, fish stick TV dinners were reheated in 3 minutes instead of 20, and the fish never stayed crispy. If fish sticks felt too processed, what came next was fancier. Chicken in cream sauce that tasted like restaurant food divided into a tray. Chicken a la king over rice was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted something that felt fancy but could be assembled from canned soup and leftover chicken. Diced chicken in cream sauce, white rice, and a side of green peas fit into the tray and tasted like a special occasion even when eaten alone. The chicken was cubed and pale, swimming in thick white sauce. The smell was cream of mushroom soup and butter, and the taste was rich, salty, and slightly bland. It cost about 70 cents in 1968, leftover chicken from Sunday's roast, a can of cream of mushroom soup, instant rice, frozen peas. The sauce was made by mixing the soup with a little milk and heating it on the stove, then spooning it over the chicken and rice in the tray. Some grandmothers made chicken a la king when company was coming, but served it in a TV dinner tray to make portion control easier. The meal reheated well because the cream sauce kept the chicken moist and the rice absorbed the extra sauce. Our children thought it looked like restaurant food and ate it carefully with a fork, trying not to spill the white sauce. By the late 1970s, frozen chicken a la king TV dinners appeared in grocery stores, and homemade versions disappeared because the frozen ones were easier. If chicken a la king felt too rich, what came next was sweeter: ham with sweet potatoes that tasted like Thanksgiving in a single tray. Ham steak with sweet potatoes was the TV dinner seniors made when a small ham went on sale and they needed 10 meals from one piece of meat. A thick slice of ham, a scoop of mashed sweet potatoes, and green beans fit into the tray and tasted like a holiday meal shrunk down for one person. The ham was pink and salty, cut into a thick oval slice. The smell was smoked ham and brown sugar. And the taste was salty-sweet with a caramelized edge from reheating. It cost about 80 cents in 1971, a small ham steak from the butcher, canned sweet potatoes mashed with butter and brown sugar, canned green beans. The sweet potatoes were orange and sticky, topped with mini marshmallows if it was a special occasion. Some grandmothers made ham TV dinners after Easter and Christmas, dividing the leftover ham into portions and freezing them in aluminum trays. The meal was reheated in the oven, and the marshmallows on the sweet potatoes turned golden and crispy. Children ate the sweet potatoes first and saved the salty ham for last, and the green beans were ignored unless Grandma was watching. By the 1980s, pre-sliced deli ham replaced ham steaks, and the tradition of baking a whole ham for one person faded. If ham steak felt too sweet, what came next was heartier: Swiss steak that tasted like pot roast but fit in a single tray. Swiss steak with egg noodles was the TV dinner seniors made when round steak was on sale and they wanted a meal that tasted slow-cooked but reheated quickly in the oven. Tenderized steak in tomato gravy, buttered egg noodles, and corn fit into the tray and filled the kitchen with the smell of simmering tomatoes. The steak was pounded thin and cut into strips, covered in thick red gravy. The smell was stewed tomatoes and onions, and the taste was tangy, beefy, and slightly sweet from the tomato sauce. It cost about 90 cents in 1972, round steak pounded with a meat mallet, canned tomatoes, egg noodles, canned corn. The steak was browned in a skillet, simmered in tomato sauce until tender, and then divided into portions over noodles. Some grandmothers made Swiss steak every other week and stored the TV dinners in the freezer, pulling one out when they didn't feel like cooking. The noodles absorbed the tomato gravy, and the corn stayed bright yellow in its compartment. Children thought Swiss steak looked like spaghetti with meat, and they ate it without realizing it was cheaper cuts of beef disguised with sauce. By the time microwave dinners appeared in stores, homemade Swiss steak TV dinners disappeared because frozen dinners were faster. If Swiss steak felt too tomatoey, what came next was richer: beef tips that tasted like Sunday dinner but came in portions for one. Beef tips with mixed vegetables was the TV dinner seniors made when stew meat went on sale, and they wanted a meal that felt substantial but fit into a single serving tray. Tender beef chunks in brown gravy, white rice, and a mix of carrots, peas, and corn filled the compartments and reheated without drying out. The beef was cut into small cubes and braised until soft, covered in thick brown gravy made from beef broth and flour. The smell was roasted beef and butter, and the taste was savory, rich, and slightly peppery. It cost about $1 in 1973. Stew meat from the butcher, a bag of frozen mixed vegetables, instant rice, canned beef broth for gravy. The beef was cooked low and slow until it fell apart, then spooned over rice in the tray with vegetables on the side. Some grandmothers made beef tips once a month and froze 6 TV dinners at a time, stacking them in the freezer wrapped in foil. The meal reheated perfectly because the gravy kept everything moist and the vegetables stayed colorful. Children ate the beef and rice first and pushed the vegetables around the tray until Grandma insisted they finish. By the 1980s, beef stroganoff replaced beef tips as the fancy TV dinner option, and homemade versions became rare. The first 10 TV dinners were survival: Salisbury steak, fried chicken, turkey with dressing, meatloaf, pot roast, fish sticks, chicken a la king, ham steak, Swiss steak, and beef tips. But the next 10 go deeper into chopped sirloin, baked chicken, stroganoff, pork chops, and chicken croquettes for seniors eating alone. Chopped sirloin with buttered noodles was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted steak but couldn't afford a full cut. Ground sirloin pressed into a thick patty, egg noodles tossed in butter, and a side of carrots fit into the tray and tasted like restaurant food made at home for one person eating alone. The sirloin was shaped into an oval patty and pan-fried until browned. The smell was seared beef and butter, and the taste was beefy, slightly charred, and rich from the beef fat. It cost about 85 cents in 1974, ground sirloin from the butcher, egg noodles from a bag, frozen carrots, a pat of butter. The patty was thicker than Salisbury steak and had a better texture because sirloin was higher quality than regular ground beef. The noodles were cooked until soft, drained, and tossed with butter and a pinch of salt before being spooned into the tray compartment. Some grandmothers made chopped sirloin TV dinners on payday when the budget allowed for better meat, dividing the portions into trays and freezing them for the month. The meal reheated well because the butter kept the noodles from drying out, and the beef patty stayed juicy if covered with foil. Children visiting after school ate chopped sirloin TV dinners and thought Grandma was fancy because it tasted like steak. The carrots were always soft and sweet, cooked until they fell apart on the fork. By the late 1970s, frozen Salisbury steak dinners were everywhere, and chopped sirloin became a forgotten upgrade. If chopped sirloin felt too fancy, what came next was simpler: baked chicken that tasted like Sunday dinner but came in a tray for one. Baked chicken leg with scalloped potatoes was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted comfort food that didn't require frying or standing at the stove. One chicken leg, creamy scalloped potatoes, and green beans fit into the tray and filled the kitchen with the smell of baked chicken and cheese. The chicken leg was golden brown and seasoned with paprika and salt. The smell was roasted chicken and cream, and the taste was savory, slightly crispy on the outside and tender inside. It cost about 75 cents in 1975, one chicken leg from the butcher, boxed scalloped potato mix, frozen green beans. The scalloped potatoes were made from a box, layered with milk and butter, then baked until creamy and golden on top. The chicken leg was baked alongside the potatoes in the same oven, making the meal easy to assemble and clean up simple. Some grandmothers baked chicken legs every Sunday and made 4 TV dinners for the week, storing each tray in the refrigerator covered with foil. The meal reheated perfectly in the oven at 350 degrees for 15 minutes, and the scalloped potatoes stayed creamy. Children loved the chicken leg because it was easy to eat with your hands, and the crispy skin was the best part. The green beans were soft and buttery, seasoned with salt and pepper. By the 1980s, microwave dinners replaced homemade baked chicken TV dinners because they were faster and easier to store. If baked chicken felt too simple, what came next was richer. Beef stroganoff that tasted like restaurant food divided into a tray. Beef stroganoff over egg noodles was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted something that felt fancy but could be assembled from canned soup and leftover beef. Sliced beef in cream sauce, egg noodles, and a side of peas fit into the tray and tasted like a special meal even when eaten alone at the kitchen table. The beef was sliced thin and simmered in sour cream and mushroom gravy. The smell was rich, cream, mushrooms, and beef broth, and the taste was tangy, creamy, and slightly peppery. It cost about $1 in 1976. Leftover roast beef sliced thin, a can of cream of mushroom soup, sour cream, egg noodles, frozen peas. The sauce was made by mixing the soup with sour cream and a little beef broth, then simmering the beef slices in the sauce until heated through. The noodles were cooked separately, undrained and placed in the tray compartment before the beef and sauce were spooned on top. Some grandmothers made beef stroganoff TV dinners when they had leftover pot roast and wanted to stretch it into 4 more meals. The meal was stored in the refrigerator and reheated in the oven, and the cream sauce stayed smooth if you stirred it before reheating. Children thought stroganoff looked fancy and ate it with a fork and knife like they were at a restaurant. The peas were bright green and stayed firm, and the noodles absorbed all the extra sauce. By the 1980s, frozen beef stroganoff TV dinners appeared in stores, and homemade versions disappeared because the frozen ones tasted almost as good. If beef stroganoff felt too rich, what came next was simpler: pork chops that tasted like home cooking but fit in a single tray. Pork chop with applesauce and green beans was the TV dinner seniors made when pork was on sale, and they wanted a meal that tasted like home but only required 1 plate. A thin pork chop, a scoop of applesauce, and green beans fit into the tray and tasted like Sunday dinner shrunk down for 1 person. The pork chop was pan-fried until golden and slightly dry. The smell was fried pork and cinnamon applesauce, and the taste was savory sweet with a hint of char from the pan. It cost about 70 cents in 1977. 1 pork chop from the butcher, canned applesauce, canned green beans. The pork chop was seasoned with salt and pepper, fried in a little oil until browned, then placed in the tray compartment. The applesauce was spooned into the second compartment, and the green beans were heated and drained before being added to the third. Some grandmothers made pork chop TV dinners twice a month when pork was affordable and stored them in the freezer wrapped in foil. The meal reheated well in the oven, and the pork chop stayed tender if covered during reheating. Children loved the applesauce because it was sweet and made the pork taste better, and they always ate it first. The green beans were soft and salty, and most children left them on the tray unless Grandma was watching. By the 1980s, boneless pork chops replaced bone-in chops, and the tradition of making pork chop TV dinners faded as prepackaged frozen dinners became more popular. If pork chops felt too plain, what came next was crispier chicken croquettes that tasted like fried comfort food in a tray. Chicken croquettes with creamed corn was the TV dinner seniors made when they had leftover chicken and wanted to turn it into something crispy and filling. 2 breaded chicken patties, creamed corn, and mashed potatoes fit into the tray and tasted like fried chicken without the bones. The croquettes were golden brown and shaped into thick ovals. The smell was fried breadcrumbs and chicken, and the taste was savory, creamy on the inside, and crunchy on the outside. It cost about 65 cents in 1978. Leftover chicken chopped and mixed with breadcrumbs and egg, canned creamed corn, instant mashed potatoes. The chicken was mixed with breadcrumbs, shaped into patties, and pan-fried until crispy, then placed in the tray compartment. The creamed corn was heated on the stove and spooned into the second compartment, and the mashed potatoes were prepared from a box and added to the third. Some grandmothers made chicken croquettes every time they roasted a chicken, turning the leftovers into 4 TV dinners for the week. The meal was stored in the refrigerator and reheated in the oven, and the croquettes stayed crispy if reheated uncovered. Children loved the croquettes because they tasted like chicken nuggets before nuggets existed, and the creamed corn was sweet and thick. The mashed potatoes were smooth and pale, topped with a pat of butter that melted when reheated. By the 1980s, frozen chicken patties replaced homemade croquettes, and the tradition of making them from scratch disappeared. The first 15 TV dinners were familiar: Salisbury steak, fried chicken, turkey, meatloaf, pot roast, fish sticks, chicken a la king, ham steak, Swiss steak, beef tips, chopped sirloin, baked chicken, beef stroganoff, pork chops, and chicken croquettes. But the next 5 go deeper, into liver and onions, creamed chipped beef, veal cutlet, corned beef hash, and turkey tetrazzini. Liver and onions with mashed potatoes was the TV dinner seniors made when liver was the cheapest meat at the butcher, and they needed a meal that would last all week. A thin slice of beef liver smothered in fried onions, mashed potatoes, and a side of carrots fit into the tray, and tasted like survival disguised as dinner. The liver was dark brown and slippery, fried in a hot skillet with sliced onions until barely cooked through. And the smell was strong, metallic liver and caramelized onions, and the taste was bitter, irony, and slightly sweet from the onions that covered it. It cost about 50 cents in 1965. 1 pound of beef liver from the butcher, onions from the garden or store, instant mashed potatoes, canned carrots. The liver was sliced thin, dredged in flour, and fried quickly to keep it from turning tough and rubbery. Some grandmothers made liver TV dinners once a month when the budget was tight and stored them in the freezer wrapped in foil. Children refused to eat liver TV dinners and pushed the liver to the side of the tray, eating only the mashed potatoes and carrots. The onions helped mask the liver's flavor, but most people still hated it, and only ate it because it was cheap and full of iron. By the 1980s, liver disappeared from most dinner tables as chicken became cheaper than organ meat, and liver TV dinners were forgotten except by the oldest generation who remembered eating it during the Depression. If liver and onions felt too strong, what came next was softer: creamed chipped beef on toast that tasted like breakfast served for dinner. SOS dinner. Creamed chipped beef on toast was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted something filling that cost almost nothing and could be assembled in 10 minutes. Dried beef in white cream sauce, spooned over toast, with a side of peas fit into the tray, and tasted like military rations nicknamed SOS by soldiers who ate it during the war. The chipped beef was shredded and salty, swimming in thick white gravy made from flour, butter, and milk. The smell was salty beef and butter, and the taste was creamy, salty, and slightly bland. It cost about 40 cents in 1966. A jar of dried chipped beef, milk, flour, butter, white bread for toast, frozen peas. The beef was rinsed under cold water to remove some of the salt, then simmered in the cream sauce until heated through. Some grandmothers made creamed chipped beef TV dinners on Pension Day when the budget was tight and stored them in the refrigerator for the week. The meal reheated quickly on the stovetop or in the oven, and the toast stayed firm if kept separate until serving. Children hated creamed chipped beef because it looked like gray slop on bread, and they called it SOS, which stood for stuff on a shingle, or worse, depending on who was listening. By the 1980s, creamed chipped beef disappeared from dinner tables as frozen pizza and TV dinners became cheaper and more appealing to younger generations. If creamed chipped beef felt too bland. What came next was fancier. Veal cutlet that tasted like restaurant food made at home for one. Veal cutlet with buttered peas was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted something that felt special but could be made quickly and portioned for one person. A breaded veal cutlet, buttered peas, and mashed potatoes fit into the tray and tasted like the kind of meal you'd order at a diner but made at home and eaten alone. Veal was pounded thin and breaded with seasoned flour and breadcrumbs, pan-fried until golden and crispy. The smell was fried veal and butter, and the taste was tender, mildly beefy, and slightly sweet from the veal. It cost about $1.20 in 1967. A small veal cutlet from the butcher, breadcrumbs, flour, egg for breading, frozen peas, instant mashed potatoes. The cutlet was fried in a hot skillet with a little oil until browned on both sides, then placed in the tray compartment while still hot. Some grandmothers made veal cutlet TV dinners on special occasions like birthdays or anniversaries when they ate alone, but wanted to mark the day. The meal was stored in the refrigerator and reheated in the oven, and the breading stayed crispy if reheated uncovered. Children thought veal cutlet looked fancy and ate it with a fork and knife, trying to cut it the way they saw adults do at restaurants. By the 1980s, veal became expensive and harder to find, and veal cutlet TV dinners disappeared as chicken became the cheaper alternative. Veal cutlet felt too fancy. What came next was heartier. Corned beef hash that tasted like breakfast served for dinner in a single tray. Corned beef hash with fried egg was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted breakfast for dinner and had a can of corned beef hash in the pantry. Corned beef hash browned in a skillet, topped with a fried egg, with a side of toast fit into the tray, and tasted like diner food made at home for one person. The hash was chunky and greasy, browned until crispy on the edges. The smell was fried potatoes and canned beef, and the taste was salty, savory, and slightly greasy from the beef fat. It cost about 55 cents in 1968, a can of corned beef hash, 1 egg, white bread for toast. The hash was dumped from the can into a hot skillet and fried until the edges crisped, then topped with a fried egg before being scooped into the tray. Some grandmothers made corned beef hash TV dinners once a week, and they didn't feel like cooking real dinner and stored them in the refrigerator wrapped in foil. The meal reheated quickly on the stovetop, and the egg stayed soft if reheated gently. Children loved corned beef hash because it tasted like breakfast, and the runny egg yolk mixed with the hash made everything taste better. By the 1980s, frozen breakfast TV dinners appeared in stores, and homemade corned beef hash dinners became rare. If corned beef hash felt too greasy, what came next was creamier. Turkey tetrazzini that tasted like Thanksgiving leftovers transformed into a fancy casserole for one. Turkey tetrazzini in divided tray was the TV dinner seniors made when they had leftover turkey and wanted to turn it into something creamy and fancy. Iced turkey in cream sauce with spaghetti, a side of peas, and a piece of garlic bread fit into the tray and tasted like Italian food made from Thanksgiving leftovers. The turkey was cubed and mixed with spaghetti in a thick cream sauce made from canned soup and cheese. The smell was garlic, cream, and Parmesan cheese, and the taste was rich, creamy, and slightly tangy from the cheese. It cost about 90 cents in 1969, leftover turkey from the holiday, spaghetti noodles, a can of cream of mushroom soup, Parmesan cheese, frozen peas, garlic bread from the store. The tetrazzini was assembled by mixing cooked spaghetti with the turkey and cream sauce, then spooning it into the tray compartment and topping it with cheese. Some grandmothers made turkey tetrazzini TV dinners the week after Thanksgiving and stored them in the freezer, pulling one out when they wanted something that felt like a treat. The meal reheated perfectly in the oven because the cream sauce kept everything moist, and the cheese melted again on top. The first 20 TV dinners were survival. Salisbury steak, fried chicken, turkey, meatloaf, pot roast, fish sticks, chicken a la king, ham steak, Swiss steak, beef tips, chopped sirloin. On baked chicken, beef stroganoff, pork chops, chicken croquettes, liver and onions, creamed chipped beef, veal cutlet, corned beef hash, and turkey tetrazzini. Fried fish fillet with hush puppies and slaw was the TV dinner seniors made on Fridays when fish was required, and frozen fillets were cheaper than fresh cod from the market. Breaded fish fillet, 3 hush puppies, and a scoop of coleslaw fit into the tray and tasted like a fish fry shrunk down for one person eating alone. The fish fillet was rectangular and golden, coated in cornmeal breading that stayed crispy if fried hot and fast. The smell was fried fish and cornmeal, and the taste was mild, flaky, and slightly greasy from the oil. It cost about 65 cents in 1970. Frozen fish fillet, cornmeal for breading, vegetable oil for frying, a bag of coleslaw mix, hush puppy mix from a box. The fillet was thawed, dredged in seasoned cornmeal, and fried in hot oil until golden brown and crispy. The hush puppies were mixed from a box, dropped by spoonfuls into the same oil and fried until golden. The coleslaw was made from a bagged mix, tossed with mayonnaise and a little vinegar, then spooned into the tray compartment. Some grandmothers made fried fish TV dinners every Friday and stored them in the refrigerator, reheating them in the oven to keep the breading crispy. The meal was popular in the South, where fish fries were common, and hush puppies were served alongside every fried fish meal. Children loved the hush puppies because they were sweet and crispy, and they dipped them in the coleslaw or ate them plain. Beef pot pie in aluminum tray was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted comfort food that didn't require multiple dishes. Roast beef, mixed vegetables, and gravy baked under a flaky crust fit into a single round tray and tasted like home cooking without the cleanup. The pot pie was golden brown on top with a flaky, buttery crust. The smell was baked pastry and beef gravy, and the taste was savory, rich, and slightly peppery from the gravy. It cost about $1 in 1971. Stew meat diced small, a bag of frozen mixed vegetables, canned beef gravy, a sheet of pie crust from the store or made from scratch. The beef was browned in a skillet, mixed with the vegetables and gravy, then spooned into a round aluminum tray and topped with pie crust. The edges of the crust were crimped to seal it, and the top was brushed with butter before baking at 375 degrees for 30 minutes until golden. Some grandmothers made a dozen beef pot pies at once and froze them, pulling one out when they wanted a hot meal without standing at the stove. The meal reheated perfectly in the oven, and the crust stayed flaky if reheated uncovered. Children loved pot pies because they could eat them with a spoon, and the crust was the best part, buttery and golden. The filling was thick and chunky, and the vegetables stayed soft and easy to eat. By the 1980s, frozen pot pies became cheaper than homemade, and the tradition of making them from scratch disappeared as Swanson and Banquet dominated the frozen food aisle with chicken and turkey pot pies that cost less than $1. If beef pot pie felt too rich, what came next was softer. Chicken fricassee with biscuit that tasted like stew served with bread in a single tray. Chicken fricassee with drop biscuit was the TV dinner seniors made when they had leftover chicken and wanted to turn it into something creamy and filling. A diced chicken in cream sauce, a drop biscuit, and green beans fit into the tray and tasted like chicken and dumplings, but easier to portion and reheat. The chicken was cubed and simmered in a thick cream sauce made from canned soup and milk. Smell was cream of chicken soup and butter, and the taste was rich, savory, and slightly bland. Leftover chicken diced into cubes, a can of cream of chicken soup, milk, a drop biscuit made from Bisquick or scratch, frozen green beans. The chicken was simmered in the cream sauce until heated through, then spooned into the tray compartment. The drop biscuit was baked separately and placed in the second compartment, and the green beans were heated and drained before being added to the third. Some grandmothers made chicken fricassee TV dinners after roasting a chicken on Sunday, dividing the leftovers into 4 trays for the week. The meal reheated well because the cream sauce kept the chicken moist, and the biscuit could be warmed separately or placed on top of the chicken to soak up the gravy. Children loved the biscuit because it was soft and buttery, and they tore it into pieces to dip in the cream sauce. The green beans were soft and salty, and most children ate them without complaint because they were easy to chew. By the 1980s, frozen chicken dinners with biscuits appeared in stores, and homemade fricassee TV dinners became rare as prepackaged options became cheaper and more convenient. If chicken fricassee felt too creamy, what came next was simpler: ham and lima beans with cornbread that tasted like Southern cooking in a single tray. Ham and lima beans with cornbread was the TV dinner seniors made when they had a ham bone left from Sunday dinner and wanted to stretch it into 4 more meals. Diced ham, lima beans cooked in ham broth, and a square of cornbread fit into the tray and tasted like Southern comfort food made for one person. The ham was diced into small cubes and mixed with the lima beans. The smell was smoky ham and buttery beans, and the taste was salty, savory, and slightly sweet from the cornbread. Children hated lima beans because they were mushy and tasted like paste, but they ate the ham and cornbread without complaint. The cornbread was crumbly and slightly sweet, perfect for soaking up the bean broth. By the 1980s, lima beans fell out of favor as younger generations preferred green beans or corn, and ham and lima bean TV dinners became a forgotten relic of Southern cooking for seniors living alone. If ham and lima beans felt too heavy, what came next was crispier: breaded pork tenderloin with sauerkraut that tasted like German food in a single tray. Breaded pork tenderloin with sauerkraut was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted something crispy and tangy that could be assembled quickly. A thin, breaded pork cutlet, a pile of sauerkraut, and mashed potatoes fit into the tray and tasted like a German schnitzel dinner shrunk down for one person eating alone. The pork tenderloin was pounded thin and breaded with seasoned flour and breadcrumbs, then pan-fried until golden and crispy. The smell was fried pork and vinegar from the sauerkraut, and the taste was savory, crispy, and tangy. It cost about 85 cents in 1974. A small pork tenderloin from the butcher, breadcrumbs, flour, egg for breading, canned sauerkraut, instant mashed potatoes. The tenderloin was pounded thin with a meat mallet, dredged in flour, dipped in beaten egg, coated in breadcrumbs, and fried in hot oil until golden and crispy on both sides. The sauerkraut was heated in a saucepan with a little water and drained before being spooned into the tray, and the mashed potatoes were prepared from a box and added to the third compartment. Some grandmothers made breaded pork tenderloin TV dinners once a month when pork was on sale and stored them in the freezer wrapped in foil. The meal reheated well in the oven, and the breading stayed crispy if reheated uncovered. Children were divided on the sauerkraut. Some loved the tangy flavor, while others refused to eat it and pushed it to the side of the tray. The mashed potatoes were smooth and bland, which balanced the strong vinegar flavor of the sauerkraut. By the 1980s, boneless pork chops replaced pork tenderloin as the cheaper option, and breaded pork tenderloin TV dinners became rare as pre-breaded frozen cutlets appeared in grocery stores. Spam slice with candied yams was the TV dinner seniors made when the budget was tight and canned meat was cheaper than fresh. A thick slice of spam fried until browned, candied yams topped with marshmallows, and green beans fit into the tray and tasted like survival disguised as a holiday meal for one person eating alone at the kitchen table. The spam was sliced thick and pan-fried in its own grease until the edges crisped and caramelized, turning golden brown and slightly sticky from the sugar in the meat. The smell was salty pork and burnt sugar, and the taste was intensely salty, processed, and slightly sweet from the caramelized edges. It cost about 50 cents in 1975, a can of Spam, canned sweet potatoes mashed with butter and brown sugar, mini marshmallows, canned green beans. The Spam was sliced into quarter-inch slabs and fried in a hot skillet with no added oil because it released enough grease on its own, then placed in the tray while still hot. The candied yams were made from canned sweet potatoes mashed smooth with butter and brown sugar, spooned into the second compartment, and topped with mini marshmallows that were browned under the broiler before the tray was wrapped and stored. Some grandmothers made Spam TV dinners twice a month when pension checks ran out before the end of the month and there was no money for fresh meat from the butcher. The meal was stored in the refrigerator and reheated in the oven, and the Spam stayed moist and salty even after reheating. Children hated Spam because it looked like pink loaf meat and tasted too salty. But they ate the candied yams first and saved the green beans for last if they had to finish the plate. By the 1980s, Spam became associated with poverty and poor taste, and Spam TV dinners disappeared as younger generations refused to eat canned meat and chose frozen chicken nuggets instead. If Spam felt too processed, what came next was stranger. Vienna, sausages with potatoes that tasted like canned survival food served in a tray. Vienna sausages with boiled potatoes was the TV dinner seniors made when the pantry was nearly empty, and a can of Vienna sausages was the only protein left in the house. 4 small sausages, boiled potatoes, and canned sauerkraut fit into the tray and tasted like camping food served at home for one person who had no other options. The sausages were pale pink and slippery, straight from the can with the gelatinous broth clinging to the surface. The smell was processed meat and vinegar, and the taste was salty, soft, and slightly sour from the brine. It cost about 40 cents in 1976, a can of Vienna sausages, potatoes boiled until soft canned sauerkraut. The sausages were dumped from the can into the tray without heating or rinsing, and the potatoes were boiled whole, peeled and sliced before being placed in the second compartment. The sauerkraut was drained and spooned into the third compartment cold, because reheating it made the smell stronger and filled the kitchen with vinegar. Some grandmothers made Vienna sausage TV dinners when the grocery budget was gone, and they had to survive on canned goods until the next check arrived. The meal was eaten cold most of the time because reheating made the sausages split open and release more of the salty brine, and the potatoes turned mushy if reheated too long. Children refused to eat Vienna sausages because they looked like tiny hot dogs in slime, and they gagged on the texture and the salty aftertaste that lingered in their mouths. By the 1980s, Vienna sausages became associated with emergency rations and disaster preparedness, and Vienna sausage TV dinners disappeared except in the homes of the very poor or very old who remembered eating them during the Depression. If Vienna sausages felt too strange, what came next was fishier. Canned salmon patty with creamed peas that tasted like poverty disguised as seafood. Canned salmon patty with creamed peas was the TV dinner seniors made when they wanted fish but couldn't afford fresh, and had a can of salmon in the pantry that had been sitting there since last year. A salmon patty made from canned fish, creamed peas, and a slice of white bread fit into the tray and tasted like fish cakes made from scraps and necessity, not choice. The salmon patty was pale pink and held together with breadcrumbs and egg, pan-fried until browned on both sides, but still soft in the middle. The smell was fishy and slightly metallic from the can, and the taste was soft, salty and fishy, with bits of bone and skin, no matter how carefully you tried. It cost about 60 cents in 1977, a can of salmon, breadcrumbs, 1 egg, canned peas in cream sauce, white bread, The salmon was dumped from the can into a bowl with the juice and all, mashed with a fork to break up the bones and skin, mixed with breadcrumbs and a beaten egg to bind it together, shaped into a thick patty with your hands, and fried in a little oil until browned and crispy on the outside. The creamed peas were heated in a saucepan straight from the can and spooned into the tray while still hot, and the white bread was placed in the third compartment to soak up the pea sauce and make the meal feel more filling. Some grandmothers made canned salmon TV dinners when fresh fish was too expensive or unavailable, and stored them in the refrigerator wrapped in foil for the week. The meal reheated poorly because the salmon patty fell apart and turned mushy in the microwave, and the creamed peas turned watery and separated when reheated too long. Children hated canned salmon patties because they had to pick out the tiny bones with their fingers, and the texture was grainy and fishy, and they complained loudly that it tasted like cat food and smelled like the can it came from. The white bread soaked up the creamed pea sauce and turned soggy and gray, but some children ate it anyway because it was the least offensive part of the meal. By the 1980s, frozen fish fillets became cheaper and more available than canned salmon, and salmon patty TV dinners disappeared completely as younger generations refused to eat food that came from a can with bones still inside, and a smell that lingered in the kitchen for hours after cooking. If canned salmon felt too fishy and too much like poverty food, what came next was even more extreme: beef tongue with boiled cabbage that tasted like organ meat. No one wanted to eat, but seniors remembered from the Depression. Beef tongue with boiled cabbage was the TV dinner seniors made when organ meat was the cheapest option at the butcher, and they needed protein that would last all week, even if it meant eating something most people refused to touch. A slice of boiled beef tongue, boiled cabbage, and boiled potatoes fit into the tray and tasted like survival food from the Depression that most people had tried to forget, but seniors living alone remembered clearly because they had no choice. The tongue was gray and slimy before cooking, boiled in salted water for 2 hours until tender enough to slice, then peeled and sliced thin like deli meat. The smell was strong: boiled organ meat and sulfur from the cabbage that filled the entire house and wouldn't go away for hours, and the taste was soft, slightly metallic, and faintly beefy with a texture that felt disturbingly familiar, too much like chewing a human tongue for most people to handle. It cost about 75 cents in 1978. A beef tongue from the butcher sold cheap because no one else wanted it. Cabbage, potatoes. The tongue was boiled for 2 hours in a large pot until the thick outer skin peeled off easily like rubber, then sliced thin with a sharp knife and placed in the tray compartment while still warm. The cabbage was boiled separately until soft and limp and placed in the second compartment, and the potatoes were boiled whole, peeled, and sliced into thick rounds before being added to the third compartment with a pat of butter. Some grandmothers made beef tongue TV dinners once a month when the pension check was small and organ meat was the only affordable protein at the butcher, storing them in the refrigerator wrapped tightly in foil. The meal was reheated in the oven at low temperature, and the tongue stayed tender and moist if covered during reheating to prevent it from drying out. Children refused to eat beef tongue TV dinners entirely and left the table crying or gagging because the idea of eating a tongue, an actual tongue that had been in a cow's mouth, was too disturbing and disgusting to even consider, and the texture made them gag and spit it out immediately. The cabbage smelled like sulfur and old socks, and most children held their noses and refused to take even one bite. By the 1980s, organ meat, disappeared almost completely from most American dinner tables as chicken became cheaper and more available than beef tongue, and tongue TV dinners were forgotten and abandoned, except by the oldest generation who remembered eating it during hard times and didn't have the luxury of being picky. If beef tongue felt too extreme and too much like eating something that shouldn't be eaten, the final TV dinner was the bleakest and most desperate, that tasted like bones boiled for hours just to scrape off the tiniest scraps of meat. Neckbones with rice and pan gravy was the TV dinner seniors made when there was no money left for real meat, and the butcher sold neckbones for almost nothing because no one else wanted them, and they were considered waste. 2 neckbones, white rice, and pan gravy made from the bone drippings and flour fit into the tray and tasted like desperation boiled until tender, and served in portions for one person eating alone at the kitchen table, with no one to talk to and nothing to celebrate. The neckbones were small and bony, with very little meat clinging to them, boiled in a pot of salted water for 3 or 4 hours until the scraps of meat fell off the bone. The smell was boiled bones and beef broth that smelled faintly of dog food, and the taste was beefy, gelatinous from the marrow, and slightly greasy from the fat that floated to the surface of the water. It cost about 30 cents in 1979. A pound of neck bones from the butcher sold in a bag marked soup bones. White rice bought in bulk, flour and water for making gravy from the bone broth. The neck bones were boiled in a large pot for hours until the meat was tender enough to fall off, then placed in the tray with a ladle of broth poured over them. The rice was cooked separately in boiling water and spooned into the second compartment, and the pan gravy was made by thickening the bone broth with a spoonful of flour mixed with cold water and stirred over heat until it thickened into gravy that was poured over the rice. Some grandmothers made neckbone TV dinners at the very end of the month when there was no money left in the budget and the pantry was empty except for rice, flour, and a few bones purchased from the butcher for pennies. The meal was stored in the refrigerator and reheated on the stovetop in a small saucepan, and the bones were sucked clean to get every last bit of meat, marrow, and flavor, because wasting even a scrap felt sinful. Children refused to eat neckbone TV dinners because there was almost nothing to eat except gristle, fat, and cartilage, and they left the bones on the tray untouched and pushed the tray away in disgust. The rice soaked up the greasy gravy and turned gray and heavy, and most children refused to eat more than a few bites. By the 1980s, neckbones disappeared from most American dinner tables entirely, as even the poorest families could afford chicken legs or ground beef, and neckbone TV dinners became a forgotten and shameful memory of the Depression era, when people ate bones and sucked the marrow because there was absolutely nothing else available, and survival meant eating things that would make modern people gag. Homemade TV dinners. Salisbury steak with mashed potatoes and peas, fried chicken with buttered corn, turkey with dressing and cranberry sauce, meatloaf with green beans, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, fish sticks with macaroni and cheese, chicken a la king over rice, ham steak with sweet potatoes, Swiss steak with egg noodles, beef tips with mixed vegetables, chopped sirloin with buttered noodles, baked chicken leg with scalloped potatoes, beef stroganoff over egg noodles, pork chop with applesauce and green beans, chicken croquettes with creamed corn, liver and onions with mashed potatoes, creamed chipped beef on toast, veal cutlet with buttered peas, corned beef hash with fried egg, turkey tetrazzini in divided tray, fried fish filleted with hush puppies and slaw, beef pot pie in aluminum tray, chicken fricassee with drop biscuit, ham and lima beans with cornbread, breaded pork tenderloin with sauerkraut, spam slice with candied yams. Did your grandmother make homemade TV dinners? Which one brings back memories?